welcome to another edition of Shift Change, the Connected Worker webinar series. Each month, Dozuki leaders bring together lessons, observations, and hard-earned insights from over 500 manufacturers worldwide. Now, as we go on our webinar today, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring those throughout the session, and if it makes sense, we'll integrate those into the webinar. And with that, we're going to jump right in. Today, our topic is the Industrial AI Reality Check. We have two hosts today that have a vast amount of manufacturing experience, both operationally and also managerially. I want to introduce our guests today. We have CEO of Dozuki, Jerry Dolinsky, and Head of Product at Dozuki, Alan Yeung. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott.
And Jerry and Alan, where are you two calling in from today?
I am in cloudy, rainy Minneapolis today.
Yeah.
I'm in sunny New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey.
Excellent. You know, in the past half of the first year of 2026, both of you have traveled extensively doing site visits at our customers' facilities and also attending and speaking at conferences within the industry. And we keep hearing about how AI is going to replace millions of workers. That's the big fear. And, you know, to kick us off, Jerry, how do you see this impacting the frontline operations in manufacturing?
Well, first of all, I'm hoping everybody's hearing less about AI replacing civilization, right? Where it started with some year ago. And I think less and less you hear really across industries that every job's going to be replaced. But going back to your question, you know, how does it impact the front line of manufacturing? I think the first thing you need to look at is what type of manufacturer are you? If you're manufacturing a relatively simple to manufacture product and large volumes of it, I think the AI with both automation and robotics will have an impact on some positions. I think some of those positions will be refocused in different areas of the business because there's still complexity. Even if you have automation and robots, it may be a shift on the type of resources you need. You know, as it relates to a manufacturer such as discrete or assembly manufacturer, that you have a relatively low volume and a more complex product, I don't think any jobs are going to be replaced. I think we still have a challenge in a large part of manufacturing where there's a shortage of workers, and I don't see that going away. As well as I also see is that with the number of manufacturing frontline workers that are retiring, I think the challenge is getting worse. So, so back to your question, it's there will be some impact. I don't think it's going to be great. I think we're still going to have a shortage of workers for some time in manufacturing. Alan, I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I can draw on some of my experience in manufacturing. You know, I used to work at Colgate-Palmolive for the past 14 years, and I look to the history to kind of tell us what has happened, right? So in manufacturing, you know, actually there was an introduction of AI. We had it before in terms of machine learning. And really what we saw in terms of those aspects, it really helped to actually augment the jobs that people were doing. It actually gave them more data, gave them more insights. A lot of the things that in manufacturing are still kind of revolve around the human. The humans are now more informed to take those actions, right? And then also, I think while some jobs will be automated, I think it will lead to a creation of new jobs. So, for example, you know, a lot of these packaging lines have been automated, but it has created these new jobs in maintenance to maintain those machines, be able to actually program those machines instead of actually doing the mundane tasks of packing these boxes repetitively. Actually, I see the upskilling levels of the frontline individuals starting to move higher and higher. And then, you know, that's kind of where I see the industry heading.
Seems like with a lot of these technologies, the story is about adapting. And so if AI is not going to replace the frontline, let's talk about some of the ways you see it helping the frontline specifically. Alan, I know you've seen that in some of your experience.
Yeah, so I think, you know, AI can help manufacturers in a couple of ways, right? And then the first and easiest way to kind of impact the front line, and we see it today with the introduction of AI, is around knowledge, right? So when ChatGPT exploded onto the the stage in 2 years ago, what was the problem solving? It was really solving the access to knowledge and having a much more easier way to do that. Before, in traditional search, the human was still, you had the search results, but the humans would still have to kind of filter through those search results and kind of determine which one you found valid and which one would make sense to you. So AI is really helping, kind of tailor that knowledge to you. And I think in manufacturing, we can do the same, right? By capturing the knowledge that is, stored in people's heads, that tribal knowledge, and bringing that to the forefront, being able to access that knowledge, I think is vastly important. And then being able to better assess the knowledge retention of the in the individuals, being able to make easier assessments of the knowledge, potentially identifying opportunities for upskilling. Like I mentioned before, I think it can really help to augment workflows, and particularly in terms of augmenting inspection. So having like a helpful eye to find the minute details that quality folks may have to check. And I think also AI can really help this continuous improvement cycle where
Yep.
the frontline team can suggest inputs, and then AI can help to distill all that noise and feedback into a concrete list of improvements for the team to act on.
Thanks, Alan. That's great. Jerry, what are some of your thoughts on this point?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with Alan. I'm hoping that a year from now we're going to hear less about the word AI. Right? I think what's important and what Alan has said is I think it's just going to be natural,
Mm.
and I think the worker underneath there is going to get all those benefits, right? As well as our belief is a skilled worker, is a safer worker, and a more productive worker. And when
Mm.
we look at AI and look at what I would say a broader term of digitization of that factory floor, just like Alan said, is it's going to be easier, right, to onboard, to train, to find information. As it relates to the individual worker, they're just going to experience it. It's not going to be something that has AI or you're using AI right now. It's just going to make their job easier because today their jobs are hard in order to find both the onboard, to educate, to upskill individuals.
So, with these trends that we've seen in manufacturing history, we see a lot of benefits to AI helping and supporting the front line. And one of the questions that just came in the chat from David from Springfield, this is the same question I was wondering. Why isn't everybody doing this? There must be a bottleneck that's standing in the way of these manufacturers achieving productivity or safely leveraging AI. So let's talk about some of those bottlenecks.
Yeah, I mean it's a journey, right? And that journey, like AI needs data. So
Yeah.
if you're going to use ChatGPT, you're going to use cloud, you hear about these large language models. Those large language models that we're using, right, not as a non-corporate user, they are scraping everything that's on the internet. And the internet's been
Yeah.
here for a long time, and there's a lot of data, and they got to make
Yep.
rhyme or reason around that. The
Yeah.
challenge when you go to a factory floor, and like we have over, as you said at the start, we have over 500 customers. I think right now we're speaking to over 200 prospective customers, and
Right.
there's a common denominator underneath there. One, they may not even have standard operating procedures. They may not
Right.
have digital courses. Everything is a buddy-buddy type of relationship where Bob is going to train Jim because Jim has been, or Bob has been here for 20 some years.
Mm.
So AI can't help you with that, right? They're not sitting in Bob's head. And then, the second thing is what we also see is that if they do have digital procedures, they're unstructured. They may be in PowerPoint, they may be in Excel. And for the most cases, they don't rely on them because they haven't been updated. They don't have the right versioning underneath there. In some of these cases, it can cause more harm than good, both from a safety, from a quality, from a scrap. So back into your question is the challenge is that how do you take thousands and thousands of documents? There may be a large, small or large that if I have a number of lines that I'm running, there may be 15, 20, 30, 50, in some cases, thousands of standard operating procedures, let alone troubleshooting or small little how-to. So the challenge that we see is it becomes a daunting task. It has to be done. We all know that we have to move from tribal knowledge to paper-based systems to a digitization. But I think what companies are experiencing is we have to go there. And the compelling event is it's hard to attract people to come work in manufacturing. It's hard to retain them. And then this other time bomb that is ticking is probably 23, 24% over the next 6, 7 years of those frontline workers are retiring.
Mm.
So when that goes away, it becomes a critical fire.
Right. Yeah, that's the big trend is the silver tsunami, as they say. And Alan, I'm sure you've seen the bottleneck in your product development experience. So, like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think, at times it's like it's a little bit of a vicious cycle, right? So everyone
Mhm.
wants to digitize, and then, when we talk to customers, I always equate it to the analogy of like losing weight. Like everyone wants to lose weight, but they never realize that they have to go to the gym and then work out. And then if you were able to do that in the first place, like you wouldn't have this problem, right? So
Right.
usually manufacturers lack the resources to even document this knowledge. And sometimes they lack the expertise, right? So being able to take this on a kind of complex process, it's unstructured, and make it into a simplified format that
Right.
new hires can consume, people just can get onboarded with. And I'm really I think as Jerry was saying, like that is where AI is able to be really good at, is like taking a lot of this unstructured content, being able to distill it down into simplified forms and deliver that knowledge back out to the rest of the folks.
Yeah, Alan, I like the way you're thinking very nuts and bolts about this. And, we've talked about history, we've talked about the trends, and now we've established, okay, so data is the bottleneck, right? So let's think like tactically. So, Jerry, what does a plant manager, what does an operations leader at a facility with 20 locations, what do they do? How do they start capturing this data?
Yeah, I mean it's happening day by day with our customers. I think the first thing is a prioritized plan.
Mm.
Meaning that if I'm going to come in with haphazardly just start gathering information and putting it together, it's the wrong way to go about that. And most of our
Mhm.
customers and what we coach them underneath there is let's identify the pain points. And most of the times when we're working with our customer, a pain point means that we've had a number of near misses from a safety perspective. A pain point may be is our quality ratings are going down, right? Or we're having recalls underneath products. It may be that scrap. It may be just our overall throughput of that line continues to go down. So therefore, whatever the instance may be, and there's probably 20 different value cases that we believe
Right.
digitization can help improve a manufacturing operation. So the first thing is let's not try to boil the ocean, let's prioritize it.
Right.
But the next step is that where are we at today from standard knowledge and standard documentation? Do we want to try to leverage that? And I'll let Alan kind of talk about technically how do you try to facilitate this better. The second may be is that if that's not there, how do I identify the subject matter experts? And how do I go and get that content from those subject matter experts? Because the challenge you have underneath there is that there's always a mix of senior individuals that have been with the company, and there's also a mix of tenured individuals. I was just with a customer down in LA last week where they did a presentation to a large group. And if you look at over a period of time, it used to be almost as 80% of my workforce in an individual plant was tenured individuals and
Mm.
20% were new. That has flipped, right? It's
Wow.
flipped. So it's a challenge underneath there. Where and how do I go get this data? There's a number of ways to do it. My whole message underneath there is don't try to boil the ocean and prioritize it. Maybe Alan can talk about how our customers,
Yeah.
how they approach to gather that data.
Yeah, and I kind of like speaking more tactically into the prioritized plan, right? So I think, a lot of folks have a hard time just getting started and even where the priority lands. And then the way that we think about this in kind of like the product development world is actually to start with the end and then work backwards, right?
Mhm.
So I would say most of the people on this call, they have some form of a skills matrix. So the skills matrix is very simple. You have a list of personnel that work in the facility and all the list of the capabilities and skills that they need in order to perform the jobs on that line. So, and then they usually have a ranking of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 meaning that you're an expert in this particular area. You actually have the ability to train others. So the way that we want to look at it is like, okay, well, what is then your ideal skill matrix bench strength or kind of mix up there, right? How many people do you want as level threes? How many people do you want as level fours? And where do you have gaps currently in your skill sets? So we want to start there. So that, okay, well, identify the most critical areas that you have in your facility. What does the skills matrix look like for those areas, and where do you have gaps there? So those are the most important areas that you want to try to get documented standard operating procedures and that tribal knowledge out, because that's the most impactful area. So then when you work backwards from there, it's okay, well, these are the skills I have, these are the personnel I have. How do I work backwards? Okay, how do I build training programs to address those skill gaps for those particular areas of a deficient skill sets? How do I identify the trainers there? And then that will give you the format of where all the content and then knowledge that you need to gather. So that helps you build the full roadmap. So if I gather the knowledge here, I can build the training program here, and then I can address my knowledge gap on my skills matrix. So that's kind of like the roadmap that I think tactically, a lot of people can follow.
Yeah. Think with the end
Yeah,
in mind.
just a little bit more on that, Alan, and there. So back from a tactical side, with leveraging AI, since I'm hoping this will be, we won't have to talk about an AI session like this for some time. We can get much more tactical stuff because I think everybody's getting a little bit AI wore out. But long as we're on it, AI has helped every one of our customers accelerate. So to me, it's not an excuse today that you are not addressing that and move into a digital environment, customer or no customer. Because what AI has allowed us to do, and we've been in this game with it for over 18 months now, when the model started to improve, is that you have a choice to make. Is that if I have a standard operating procedure that is 80% there, 90% there, needs to be adjusted, and it's sitting within Excel, PowerPoint, Word, PDF, etc. With AI, we can convert a structured guide within seconds or minutes and get you 80% there. Because the biggest challenge that our customers in the past and our future customers have is that it's resources, right? If you go into these manufacturers, there's not people sitting around having a cup of coffee looking for something to do, right? Most people have two or three hats already. And if I'm a trainer, I got to train. If I'm a process engineer, I'm trying to keep the machines running. I'm constantly tweaking. But creating this knowledge base is hard to do. And it had to be before where I had to sit there with old tools. I had to use Word and Excel. And it may be as one procedure may take me 18 hours. Now I can take what you currently have and get you 80, 90% there, and it becomes an editing. Even better from that is video to AI. Now what I can simply do, we'll talk to you in a little bit because I think you're going to ask about some stories about how they did that, but taking a video and turning that in. So I think today there's no excuse for anybody, regardless of a customer or Dozuki, because people have and they can leverage tools in order to capture this content.
Great call out, Jerry. Yeah, Dozuki's in a really fortunate position that we have these incredible customers all around the world in various verticals in manufacturing, and we learn from them, and they tell us their stories and they show us these great results when they realize that these AI tools are available. So, yeah, let's spend a couple minutes talking about that. What are you seeing out there? What are some of the results that you've seen from these different shifts in facilities?
Well, I'll start with a recent one, right? And it's a large customer. I think they have close to 80 plants on a worldwide basis.
Hmm.
And they came to us, and this is fun, is that at Dozuki, we have a Slack channel, and it's amazing that it's every day, twice a day, there's win stories coming in.
Yeah.
And this is one that's coming from a win story, and I also had a chance to speak with this plant manager. And there's two things that happen with it. One is what he saw was well, I'll use Bob again, right? I'm not sure who the guy's name was, but I'll use Bob. Bob has been there for 30 some years. He's been running this line. The productivity coming on that line is fabulous. But Bob is on shift one. On shift two, I don't have Bob. I have another individual that's only been there for a short period of time. The throughput underneath that is 35% less than what Bob is performing. So what do you do? And normally you would do is say, Bob, I know you're going to retire here in about 9 months, but can you go work the night shift for a little bit, right? And help these guys out. And, Bob is quietly retiring. He's thinking, there is no way I'm looking about when I'm going to go fishing, not work some night shift after 30 some years, right? So the plant manager took a different approach. He went over to Bob, says, Bob, look, here's my challenge, right? And it's important that you engage with everybody in the staff when you're trying to digitize and even use AI. All I want to do is I want to video you through your process. I want you to naturally talk what you're doing. I want you to kind of explain the gotchas and what you need to look for on how do you get this throughput from this line. And all I'm going to do is with my iPhone is video you and just kind of explain in natural language. And all I want to do after that, right? I'm going to come back in probably 30 minutes after I take that video, and I'm going to show you an electronic, in our terminology, a guide, which is a standard operating procedure. And Bob was amazed, right? He says it captured 85%. He said, we missed a little bit this, maybe I said it wrong. And they polished it up within 10 minutes. The second thing they did, and this is leveraging AI too, is they said, I'm going to take what was just created, I'm going to compare it to the standard operating procedure that we're using, that the shift two is using, and the compare noticed something. What it noticed was the standard operating procedure said, set the PSI of the air at 15. Bob was doing it at 17, right? Because Bob knew that the planned preventive maintenance on this product was, or this machine has not been done for 3 or 4 months, and it starts to lose, right, the compression. The second thing is he also noticed underneath there was 3 or 4 other small things. Immediately, he put that over to the second shift. Productivity didn't go up to Bob. That's not going to happen overnight, but they had a 20% productivity increase because now we took what's out of their head. Just a simple story. Go ahead, Alan. I'm going to take all your time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have two quick stories as well. I mean, the first one, kind of building upon what Jerry was saying. I went to visit a confectionery manufacturer in Chicago, and these guys make all the gummy bears that everyone loves. And again, they actually were in a worse place because they didn't have anything documented, and then the subject matter expert was actually their lead operator that was running the line. And again, in this case, it was a gentleman that English was not his first language. So as we were doing this kind of project and walkthrough with him, I went the same thing as Jerry mentioned, pull out my phone and then started to video him. And then he was having a hard time explaining to me like what his daily task. And I said, hey, well, explain to me in Spanish and in native language and walk me through it. And then that offered a lot much more detail, right? And then he was going through. So, in Chicago, the seasons change, and then as the humidity increases during the summertime, I adjust the speed of the conveyor belt so that the gummies don't get stuck together. None of that is documented on the standard operating procedure anywhere. So that was a really good tidbit of kind of, what does actual tribal knowledge look like in action? Like that was I was blown away by that. The second story I kind of want to share is around union acceptance. So we were engaging with another customer. They were a pretty big union shop, and then we were introducing AI to them as well. And first off, when we're having meetings with the folks, we're saying, well, union adoption is going to be a huge challenge, right? Are they going to be worried about the system is being tracking them? Is this something they're being forced to do? But really, the way that the customer took it, completely changed the entire story. They started to involve the union members as part of the process, and more and more of these union team members start to join these sessions where they start to digitize their tribal knowledge. And one of the the key learnings here is that, the group that they expected to become resistant became active contributors, and the main reason was trust, right? They started to see the tool as a mechanism that protects their knowledge because people want to leave something that behind. They've been working there for the past 30 years. They gain all this valuable knowledge. They're ready to retire. They want to leave this with them. And so they saw it as a tool that protected their knowledge and all the things that they learned over the past 30 years, and not a tool that tracks them, right? So that was kind of the main takeaways for me when I was talking with this customer.
Hearing those two stories side by side is powerful because it makes me wonder if the gummy bears might actually unionize themselves. That could be the future.
Maybe.
Well, let's do a very quick summary and then we'll do some final words here from each of you. Today we've covered a lot of ground on the AI reality check. We learned why AI is not going to replace frontline workers, but will change how they work. We learned about the opportunities for improving productivity and quality. We learned about data being the bottleneck for adoption. And we also saw some practical ways of how to structure this and some examples of AI achieving great results. So before we wrap up, Jerry, Alan, let's get your final one-liner. Give me your best piece of advice for everyone listening today.
Well, look, I think we know the headwinds in manufacturing, and we know those headwinds are not going away unless we address them. People are our largest asset. AI is a cape that can help those individuals upskill, grow their career. I use this comment of you want to have a digital platform that starts your day, end your day in, starts your career and end your day in. And I think it's the bottlenecks in the past of capturing this data are beyond us. So the advice and what I see underneath there is you got to get on the journey. And the longer you wait, the more fires you're going to be fighting versus getting proactive at continuously improve the business.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of echo along the same lines. Like, really, the barrier to get started is very low now, right? So before we're concerned about resources and time, before creating a standard operating procedure would take an entire week, and now like the barrier to failure, it's like what are you gonna do? Like, just go out for a afternoon video a process, and then now you can see what you get, and you go from there. So don't be afraid to try and then experiment, and then you can take those learnings and then really scale from there.
Awesome. Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of Shift Change. On behalf of everyone at Dozuki, thanks to Jerry and Alan for sharing their perspective and strategies. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you would like to learn more about how to scale performance across every shift and every site, visit dozuki.com. And until next time, remember, if you don't write it down, it never happened. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Good stuff.